Hi, everyone. This is Megan.
And this is Steven.
And this is the Synchrony podcast, where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. It's been a wild day.
It has.
We had work. We had a meetup.
We had a meetup today with our community.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had a cool crew of people show up, and we offered the chance for people to do lightning talks. So we got to hear about different aspects of people's knowledge, just cool stuff that they knew about. It was
learning
awesome.
about global missions, learning about barbecue sauce. Super pumped.
Yeah, Steven expounded about bees.
Yeah, I'm sorry to y'all who had to hear me talk for way more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a 5-minute talk, but Steven got going on bees. But, it was good.
Yeah.
I feel like people learned stuff. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Nice to see everybody. We hadn't done a meetup last month because of all the back-to-school craziness, so it's good to get back in the swing of it.
Yep.
Before we get into this episode, we have a couple of announcements.
We do. We have a comment winner.
Yay! So if you weren't here last week, we decided that we were going to do a little giveaway.
Yep.
To a listener who liked and commented on the YouTube video of this. We want to create more YouTube engagement because we have a lot of outreach to new audiences there.
Yep.
So you went and looked at the comments and selected a winner.
I didn't select a winner. I put it into a comment random generator that took the comments
and selected the winner.
Selected one for me. So I didn't just handpick my favorite person.
Fancy.
Even though this person that did win is one of my favorite people.
Yeah, well, the folks who showed up in the comments are longtime supporters and listeners, so chances are some of our favorites are going to be in there. But
so, drum roll, please. Morgan McCoy.
Yay!
Thank you so much. We will send you your $25 Amazon gift card.
Thanks, Morgan. We love you.
Thank you. So yeah. Next week.
We're going to do it again?
Yeah, we're doing it again.
Okay. So if you like and comment on this week's episode's YouTube video, you can do that up until we record our next episode, which is about a week from now. And we will do the same thing. We'll draw from the commenters and send someone a gift card.
That's right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for helping us reach just new pockets of listeners. It's really a big deal. It helps us get the word out to new people and create more access to our resources and bring more people into the matching pipeline.
Yep. Okay. So our next announcement, because we already have a lot of announcements, can you combine our next two?
So I'm going to talk about Cafe 117, and I'm also going to talk about our Synchpins. So if you haven't heard about Cafe 117, they're an apostolic-owned coffee company. We've been partnered with them for a while because we love their mission and their message, but they create amazing coffee, high-quality single origin, and amazing blends that you can go get on their website. You can get it ordered on subscription. It will ship directly to you, and it's delightful. Roasted to order just for you. They use 20% of their proceeds to go and do good, amazing things in the world by supporting apostolic aid organizations like Compassion Services International. And we're really grateful to them because this fall at the UPCI General Conference in October, they are going to be making themselves available to provide our Synchpins to anyone who is at General Conference who would like to pick one up. So these are pins exclusively to be worn by Apostolic Singles. You don't have to be a part of our listener community or our matchmaking pipeline to have one of these. We've created them so that singles can start to recognize each other in public apostolic spaces, so that it's a little bit less confusing about who's available or who's looking for someone. And we want to make them available to you as easily as we can. So you can grab one for free at General Conference. Right now there's a link in our Instagram link tree if you want to go check that out, and you can register and pay the cost of shipping, and we'll mail one to you.
Yep.
Or if you're a member of the community, just hang tight. We're just going to mail you one for free.
Hey, y'all, community. Stop buying these things. We're going to give them to you for free.
Yeah, you don't have to pay shipping. We will just send you one. Okay, did that work?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's all the announcements. Are we good with announcements?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. I'm really nervous about this episode. I've been nervous about it all week.
Well, I feel like you say that about 60% of our episodes.
I'm nervous about this one for different reasons.
Okay.
I get nervous when we record something that I feel like is going to make people that's controversial.
Oh, like whatever. Kicking the amp out.
kicking the hippo?
Ant pile.
It sounded like you said hippo, and I was like,
I
that's
mean,
extremely dangerous.
well,
You should not do that. That is the most
they're
dangerous
both
animal in Africa.
they're both dangerous situations. But
Drastically different
one
risk assessments
one
there.
one is a lot more unwise than the other.
Yeah. Okay. Do not kick ant piles or hippos as a result of listening to this podcast episode. Lord have mercy.
I need more coffee.
Yeah. No, I'm nervous about this one because I'm going to have to be vulnerable in this one in a way that I'm not usually on the podcast. So bear with me, I guess, is the ask. Let's say this. I'll get into the sort of theme of our episode. I'm sure people can see it from the title, but I'm going to start by telling a personal story.
Okay.
And before I get into the personal story, I want to say that this is going to deal with people from my past relationships. And it is not intended in any way to be salacious or sensationalized or to paint this person that I'm going to talk about in a bad light. This isn't really a story about him. This is a story about choices that I made in the dating space as an apostolic.
And as a disclaimer, we are going to be changing slight details, just to protect the person.
It's important that the people that we talk about, that we don't infringe on their privacy by trying to do this. And we're not also just talking about this because we want you guys, we're not trying to just talk about ourselves and our past and our history all the time. There's a specific reason why I think this is pertinent for apostolics who are dating. Yeah. Because I don't think I'm the only person, or you're the only person who's ever fallen into this trap.
Yeah. I want you to take some weight off of yourself by saying, having a podcast where we have to talk to each other every week. You're going to talk about yourself in the podcast, and it's okay. Yeah. I'm giving you permission to talk about yourself.
I know. I feel a little self-conscious about how I don't like being on camera. I don't like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's a little out of my comfort zone.
Well, we're 33 episodes into it now. So.
We're here. We're doing it. Anyway, so I'm going to drink a big slurp of coffee before we get into this.
Just like a Minecraft sip noise.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, well, you're welcome to the few who know.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Okay, so in 2012, I was in college. I think I was, 19 at the time. And I think that this actually might have started in 2011. I went with my family on vacation. So I wasn't dating anyone at the time. I had been in other relationships coming out of high school, starting college, but I happened to be single in this moment. And my family and I went on vacation to a city a couple hours away from where we lived. It was a normal vacation spot for us. We enjoyed going there. We'd spent some time there as a family. And we were just going to go, and I think we were going for Thanksgiving maybe, or sometime in the fall. And we had to stop by a store when we first got into town, or early on. I think my dad's fishing shoes broke. I think was the context for this. I think we went to Walmart. And I'm in Walmart, and my very, I'm in probably if knowing myself at the time, I was probably wearing a graphic T-shirt and a jean skirt and sneakers or sandals, not the pinnacle of fashion by any stretch.
I'm in love with a girl with a jean skirt.
If you know that reference, then you're
sorry.
Old. So I'm in the store with my mom, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see two guys approaching us.
Okay.
Right? And there's an older guy, and then a guy who's probably a young high schooler. And the other guy looked to be in his mid-20s maybe. And he walked up and smiled at us, and he said, "Hi, nice to meet you. I just wanted to come and ask, are y'all apostolic?" And we said, "Yeah, we are." My mom and I were there. It was very clear that we were dressed like apostolic women. And he shook our hands, and he just said, "Well, I'm, welcome. Are you here vacationing? Have you moved here?" I said, "Oh, we're just here in town for the weekend." And he basically said, "I belong to an apostolic church here. This is the name of the church and the pastor. if you guys are going to be here on Sunday, we'd love for you to come visit us. And it was just an invitation to church. This person was very good looking. And I honestly, at the time, I didn't even really notice that, just because, like, in my head, like, this was just a person coming to invite us to church. But
yeah, sure.
He was a very attractive man. My mother noticed it, I think, on my behalf. And so we're like, okay, great, thanks. Like, I don't think we were staying through Sunday. I think we were going home back to church before then. But we,
I bet you reconsidered it.
Well, so we started to. So we thanked him. We moved on. And it was fine.
Yeah.
And we went about our time, and we just thought, oh, that was sweet. That, nice to know that there's this nice town, this nice church in this town. There's a nice looking guy that goes to that church. Not a big deal. The next day, my mom and I were downtown. So, a few miles from where we had been the day before. And I think we'd like gone to museum. We were sitting outside eating ice cream, and this moving truck pulls up in the road. It's a furniture delivery truck. And the same guy gets out of the truck and sees us and waves. And, we were like, hey, funny, fancy meeting you here. Like, we just sort of laughed about it. And he was working, so he had stuff to do. But he, said hi.
Oh, man. He was covered in sweat.
I don't remember him being covered in sweat.
Pheromones. It's like a Hallmark movie.
No, he didn't look gross or sweaty or over
picking up a couch.
No, it wasn't anything like that. He was a nice looking guy.
Yeah.
He was dressed well, right? He belonged to a more conservative independent church, so he was wearing, 3/4 length sleeves with his sleeves
and he was
rolled
modest.
up. Yeah, he was modest. And so my mom and I were like, wow, twice in one weekend. What a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
And immediately the wheels start turning of like, we've run into this beautiful man in this small town twice in this random trip, right? He's apostolic. What is God doing?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So the narrative starts to play in our minds, and we were joking about it, and we get home from our trip and we're continuing to kind of laugh about it. We're talking to people about it, and my mom and I kind of were just thinking about how interesting it was, what a coincidence it was. Maybe that we were meant to meet, right? Is the underlying tone. And so we decided to take matters into our own hands. This always goes well when you do this. And we remembered the name of the store that he was working for that was on the side of the van.
Oh, man.
Oh, it gets better. And so we called the store and asked, we basically said, we had such a great interaction with one of your employees. We're wondering if we could send him a thank you card to your store if you would deliver that to him.
Oh, boy.
Uh-huh. So I wrote a letter.
Yeah.
And in the letter I said basically like, we just met. I know this is really weird. But I think maybe, it wasn't a coincidence that we were meeting. Just wanted to say hi, a little bit about me. Like, I'm doing this. I'm a student here. I'm working on this. If you'd like to chat more, I'd love to hear from you basically. And you're welcome to come. We have a youth conference coming up. So if anyone from your church, we had a holiday, like a sort of like a holiday conference coming up. If anyone from your church would want to attend, we would love to have them. Right. Okay. Send this off to the store in question. And I get a letter back.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So I get this letter back, and it's like, I was so amazed when I got this letter. I'm just like blown away. It was so amazing to meet you. And I'm working on getting I think at the time he wanted to work on becoming a firefighter, but he was working at this furniture store in the meantime and was living close to family, and just was going to this church and had so many great things to say about his church. And yes, I would love to come to this youth conference, right? So I'm at this point, I'm seeing what I interpret to be the hand of God.
Oh, sure.
Aligning things for me.
Open the doors, God.
Right. All this, there's too many coincidences for this to be happening by itself.
Yeah.
And this youth conference thing rolls around. I think we may have written like another letter or two back and forth. I don't remember. And he comes with his pastor, who is an older gentleman, probably in his mid-60s, and a young woman from his church who was related to his pastor. They all traveled together, which to me seemed like such a validating thing because he was close to his pastor. His pastor was willing to come meet me and my family, and really, it seemed like he was putting a lot of emphasis on his relationship with his leadership, and that to me said great things. Right?
Oh, sure.
So they come to the conference. We spend like an hour and a half after the conference talking, right? I'm very attracted to this person. He's charming. He's very kind. He's very chivalrous. He opens the doors. He finds me a chair. He grabs me a drink at the after party thing, right? We're just exchanging stories and information, and it just seems like this dream unfolding.
Oh, yeah.
And then he goes home. We start talking on the phone. And my family goes back to where he lives to visit him. He asks my dad, he comes, we were camping. He comes to our campsite, our little camper, and asks my dad if it's okay for him to take me out on a date. We go out on our first official date. He asks me to be his girlfriend. Okay.
Swooned.
Right. All the beautiful narratives are playing in my mind, right? How God just drew me to this person and put him in my life, and he's in tune with his pastoral leadership, and he's so generous, and he's so kind, and he's very chivalrous and very overtly romantic, right? He's opening my doors, and he's telling me these beautiful, sweet things when we're meeting together. So we started a dating relationship. And we dated, I want to say about a year and a half in total. I could be slightly wrong about that timeline, but it was a good amount of time. And most of our relationship was long distance. He was living where he was living. I was mostly living in South Florida going to school. We tended to meet in my hometown because it was kind of in between, right? And we saw each other as often as we could. I fell in love very quickly. And some of that was because I was lulled into a sense of security by all of the signs that I was seeing come together in this relationship. I felt like this had to be divinely ordained because of how it was coming together. This relationship nearly destroyed me. There was nothing about it that was the will of God, I think. Beyond, I think that God can take a bad situation and make it something good. But this relationship ended up being really damaging to me and ultimately to a lot of people that I cared about. And again, I'm not here to say anything bad about this particular man or this person or paint him as a malicious actor. I think at the end of the day, he's a person who has struggles, right? But what I want people to understand is that because I chose to focus on the signs that affirmed what I wanted, the love story that I saw coming together, I wanted that fairy tale to be happening to me. And I wanted to be with this beautiful, attractive person that had found me, and I wanted to be swept off my feet. I ignored the very real biblical boundaries that should have told me that I was going down a dark path. The things that happened to me in this relationship were that almost immediately, as soon as we became official, my physical boundaries were thrown aside. So I had put up, guardrails in my relationships in the past. This person did not check that. He did not, interrogate that. Very quickly, I was in sexual sin that I had not prepared myself for or didn't think I was going to encounter. And the way that those things happened were not always my choice. And I found myself unable to I didn't feel like I could exercise any real control there. I felt like because he very quickly swept aside the boundaries that I had and kind of stepped beyond them without asking. Once that happened, because I was so in love with this person and because I believed that he was ordained, my sense was like, well, we're in it now. I have to just kind of, I'm here. We're just going to push through as fast as we can until we can get married, was really where my head was.
Yeah.
Right? So that was already a sign that I should have paid attention to. In the relationship, everything at the beginning with his family and his church involvement seemed very beautiful and peaceful. I started to see cracks in that as time went on. I found out relatively early that he had come into the church later in life. He hadn't been in the church for very long. Nothing wrong with that. But his past involved things like fathering children outside of marriage.
You didn't find that out until like...
He told me that pretty early on in the relationship. The one he didn't tell me about was that he had a felony charge. And he had done prison time. I didn't know that until later on. And he didn't want to share that with me. He begrudgingly did because we were having a conversation about jobs and finances, and it came out that he was very limited in the kind of jobs he could apply to because of his criminal history.
How long into the relationship before you found that out?
I want to say like 5 or 6 months. It might not have been that long, but it felt like we were already talking about marriage.
Yeah.
You know. So I kind of ingested that, and I believed, there's grace for everyone. Both of those things were,
sure.
Those things happened before he knew the Lord. So in my mind, like, okay, well, that's under the blood. I was interceding, I was doing things like I was praying really hard for the mother of his child that, with whom there was an estrangement. Because in my head, I was like preparing myself to become a step parent now, right? Like, I was just going to absorb this history into my life, and where it was going to be a testimony.
Yeah.
And I would travel to go spend time where he lived with his family, and loved the people that I met. He, I think there were a lot of people there that were really trying to support him. I think that there was a lot of stuff under the surface that people were afraid to tell me. That came out later. That would have been a big red flag to me. But there were already things in how people referenced his history or how they talked about him that should have tipped me off that something wasn't quite right. I came to find out later that his close relationship with his pastor was about his pastor trying to maintain control of him and trying to contain the blast radius, so to speak. Unsuccessfully. So by the time this relationship ended, I could no longer say that I had saved myself for marriage. I did not have a great relationship with God because I had to shove aside the things that I believed to be true about my personal holiness in order to live with the fact that I was still with this person.
Yeah.
Right. And because I could eventually start to see that this man could not give me the life that I felt called to live. We couldn't have a life where we didn't share the same values. We didn't share the same values about financial health, about education, about, the future, about how we wanted to parent. The values misalignment started to become more and more apparent to me. And by the time I realized that I couldn't continue the relationship, I was in a really, really dark place because I had given so much of myself physically and mentally and emotionally to this relationship. And so I find...
and this was pretty deep into your relationship too. Like,
yeah,
you were, from what I understand, like already looking at venues for...
Yeah, we toured wedding venues. We talked about plans.
Yeah.
And my family loved this person. Like,
yeah.
He really swept all of us off our feet. It wasn't just me, we practically adopted him. And he would do these kind of big, grandiose shows of affection, like, which again, women are trained to really look for. Like, there was a time when we were supposed to meet up in my hometown, but his vehicle broke down and he couldn't find a rental car because there was a big football game nearby. This is how it is in Florida, right? In North Florida. There was a big rivalry football game happening. And so all of the rental car places in this town were just like, everything was gone. So he rented a U-Haul. He paid a bunch of money to rent a U-Haul to drive over to see me. Yeah. And it was very sweet. It was like, oh, he's willing to go the extra mile. So all of us were really caught up in this story. And it felt like there was this love story written by the hand of God that was romantic, and it was serendipitous, and it was all these things that I was expecting my story to have.
Yeah.
And it took me a really long time to acknowledge the fact that this was not a Prince Charming. Like, he's just a man who had his challenges and had his good qualities and bad qualities, but he was not a person that I could build a life with. And I think I knew that well before I had the courage to really end the relationship. And it took God really putting people in my life to help me, to get me out of that situation. But I was not paying attention to the right signs in that. I think there's a lot of like little pieces that we could talk about in the relationship that would kind of help illustrate why I was so bought in. But I want to talk about just the idea that we have as a culture of like looking for signs.
Yeah.
Right.
We can expound on that a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
but actually I have something pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
Not as it's actually on the other side of the apostolic fairy tale story, right? Mm-hmm. Probably not even just apostolic, like Christian in general, I should say. I was actually around the same age. I was about 19. I was in the middle of pursuing someone.
Yeah.
We weren't dating yet officially. And we were at Youth Congress, and I get a phone call from someone I never talked to. It was a friend. It was the husband of my mom's really close friend. Mm-hmm. And he was known for like prophecy.
Yeah, operating in the gifts.
And he'll be praying and have a word, and he'll use discernment on whether he needs to talk to the person or not. Mm-hmm. Well, I had talked to this person like 2 other times in my life, and he went to my church. Like, I didn't talk to this person like ever. Nothing against them. It's just we just didn't have similar ministries at the time. And so I get a random phone call while I am in NAYC, and basically the gist of it is he says, he basically, this is going to sound really cringy to say, but he was basically talking about the likeness of my future wife, which 19-year-old me, I'm in the middle of pursuing someone. I'm like, tell me, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear it, Lord.
She's the one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so he goes on and talking about very specific things about like the way that this person's gonna be respected, the way that the person thinks. It wasn't just like, oh, you're gonna marry this person's gonna have this color hair and this color this. Right. Like, it wasn't like a detailed thing. It was more about
their first name's gonna start with a.
Yeah, it was more about her attributes spiritually, emotionally, and it was like brain candy for me. You know, I was 19 years old. I was looking for this. Like what person does not want to have someone randomly call you and talk to you about like your future spouse, right?
All of us have hoped for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. You know? All of us have stood in a campground somewhere and have been, Lord, let someone prophesy to me about who I'm going to marry. Right?
Yeah. And literally while he's talking to me, I am taking these details and applying it to this person that I'm trying to pursue. And I'm like, this fits so well. This is the Lord talking to me. This is exactly what I'm exactly in the will of God. And so, I'm intentionally keeping the details vague. But whenever me and this person, I pursued this person, we ended up dating for about a year. It was a wonderful relationship, very holy, we really respected each other.
Mm-hmm.
We really enjoyed that time together.
Yeah.
But come to find out, it just wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went our separate ways about a year and a half later, or something like that. And I was very confused about that prophecy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this would, like, Lord, like, why would you have this person randomly call me? And honestly, I didn't put much thought into the prophecy until after we broke up. And it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? So now, fast forward.
Well, hold on to your fast forward for a little bit. Let's talk about this a little bit, because I think, to summarize, like, and let's say this out of the gate, as apostolics, we believe in the gifts. We believe in prophecy and words of wisdom, words of knowledge. We believe that God gives people the ability to be sensitive to his voice and deliver messages to other people. Yeah. We do believe in signs, right?
And discernment.
Right. We believe that God will set things up in a certain way, and that sometimes we have the privilege of watching his hand work and putting the pieces together as it's happening. He'll give us insight into that. All of those things are core to who we are as apostolics.
Yeah.
We are not calling any of those things into question. However, something that we do in our humanity is we look for patterns to confirm what we want.
Yeah.
Instead of looking for patterns that confirm the word.
Yep.
And I'm a student of religions. I studied a lot of different faiths in graduate school, right? Every single religion believes that it has seen some miracles.
Oh, sure.
You know, no matter, and I'm of the opinion that it's not just because demons are doing magical things to mess with people. I think it's because sometimes humans will see patterns in things and ascribe divinity to them.
Yeah.
Right? That's just part of who we are. We identify patterns and we put meaning to those patterns. It's part of our human nature. When we're in church, especially when we're talking about things related to dating and who we select as a partner, that can be very dangerous, because we can prioritize looking for the things that confirm what we want to have happen and confirm the things that validate where we're already going, instead of checking the prophecy that we're receiving or the signs that we're identifying against Scripture.
Yep.
Right? And I think this is more applicable to my case than yours, because yours, there was nothing unscriptural about what you were receiving, and we'll talk about how it showed up in your life.
But I still
later.
did the same thing, though. I applied it 100% to what I wanted to see.
Yeah, you wanted to see it show up in this person,
Yeah.
and you found the bits and pieces that made sense.
Yeah.
For me, I had fallen in love with this person that I met coincidentally, and I wanted so strongly to believe that it was the hand of God that had ordained it, right? And because I wanted to believe that, and part of that came from a place of shame, where I wanted to validate the relationship, because I was ashamed of what was happening in the relationship.
Yeah.
I ignored the fact that there were things about my relationship and this person's life that were blatantly counter to Scripture. And I actually had, it's so funny we talk about the operation of the gifts. I had a minister in my life who is another person in our church who operated in the gifts and would minister to people. And it was so funny because this was a person who, y'all know what I mean when I say that they have like a scary altar face?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I 100% know what you're talking about.
Like, you don't want to be the devil that they're trying to cast out of someone, because like it's terrifying. And I was used to seeing this person kind of be very gruff and rough and tumble.
Authoritative.
And gruff. Like,
okay.
Yeah, this person had a military background, and it showed. And one day after a very powerful service, he had prayed over me during the service. And after the service, he approached me and sat with me. And I can only describe the way that he approached me as approaching a wounded animal, like the gentleness that he came to me with. And he was very respectful. And he did not say, break up with your boyfriend, right?
No.
He sat down and started talking to me about choices. Whew. I get really emotional thinking about this, because this message was delivered to me so beautifully, and I really ignored it, and caused and and went through a lot of suffering as a result of ignoring this, because it happened fairly early in this relationship. He started talking to me about choices and how to make choices according to scripture when we feel like we don't know what God's will is.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, putting out a fleece before the Lord and bolstering our faith, and then asking God to make it clear to us. And what he was basically encouraging me to do was to ask God to show me whether or not I should be with this person. He stressed to me, who you choose to be with is very important. God has a plan for you. He has a calling on your life. The person who you choose as your husband is going to be vitally important to how you live out your calling. Don't get a big head about it, okay? So you need to make this choice well, is what he was telling me. And the guidance was so beautiful. And I knew what he was saying. Like, I knew he was saying, the subtext was, I'm worried that you're going down the wrong path. I purposefully ignored what he said, because I didn't, this man of God who I have seen operate in the gifts is coming to me, delivering me this timely, very carefully delivered message.
Yeah.
I know exactly what he's trying to tell me, and I turned the other way and went right back into the arms of this man.
I know who you're talking about too. And there's a difference between someone who operates in the gifts and someone who operates in the gifts and is pinpoint accurate.
Yeah.
And choosing to ignore those people are the ones that you're like, oh, that was kind of dumb in hindsight.
Yeah, it was really, and I even had a conversation with my boyfriend about it. Like, I called him panicking. Like, we have to pray, or we need to go on a fast, or we need to do something about this, and he was like, I don't think we need to worry about this. Like, it's one person, and that was enough for me to say, oh yeah, you're right. Like, let's just go back to living in sin. So, what I can look back now and see is that I chose to believe the signs that I wanted to believe. I chose to believe the patterns that confirmed what I wanted. And I wanted my fairy tale to have come true, And I hear this from people, happening to other people, right? I'll talk to people who have gone through divorce or a loss, and they'll say, it seemed like all the things were adding up, right? It seemed like I just felt like God had brought us together. I felt like this was the will of God. There were so many things that were getting confirmed, right?
Sometimes we can apply the prophecies or apply someone speaking a word of encouragement into your life and then saying, yes, this fits perfect for my situation right now. Right. Thank you so much. And now that is confirmation, and you don't go back and pray about it.
Right. And you
don't go back and check and say, God, is this what that person was talking about? Is this truly how you feel? Or is what they're talking about completely about something else?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because the thing about it is, like, and you and I are not spiritual gurus, right?
No,
like I do not operate in the gifts of prophecy that I know of, right? So I'm not here to position myself as some kind of an expert, but I've heard my leadership say before, prophecy will always confirm the word, right? The Lord does not contradict himself.
Yeah.
If I'm receiving a prophecy about, or if I'm putting together signs about, oh, I should be in a relationship with this person, but this person does not map to what I know God has called me to do, and their life does not reflect the scriptural characteristics of a husband that I need, right?
Yeah.
If they are not demonstrating the fruits of the Spirit, if they're not demonstrating the qualities of a deacon as described to Timothy by Paul, if they're not demonstrating Christ-likeness in their speech and their actions, it does not matter what pattern I have identified in my little human brain that can seek a pattern out of anything, right? People have, over the course of history, we've found patterns in all kinds of craziness, and how, you threw a pile of animal bones into a bowl and people discerned things out of them for centuries, right? Like,
oh, sure.
Humans will make up patterns when it serves them. My human interpretation of the patterns I am seeing is never sufficient to contradict what the word says.
Oh, yeah.
And if I am prioritizing the pattern that I came up with, the signs that I see, over alignment with the word, and I believe alignment with the values that I have that God has cultivated in me that I feel like are important to who I am in him, I'm missing the point.
Yeah.
Right. And the end result of that was devastating. So I don't want to harp too much on the particulars of our history, but like, the reason why I'm saying this is because I believe that there are people who, in their early, relationships, right? In their dating relationships and the situationships that they end up in, even in synchrony relationships where they've met someone through us and they're just in the early process of figuring out if there's someone that they want to cultivate a relationship with, it is very important that you are holding up this person's characteristics against Scripture.
Yeah.
Not against what I said about their alignment with you, not against what your parents and family say about how great they are, and definitely not against what your own heart is telling you about how well they fit with your dream.
Yeah.
Right. The way that the story ends for me, besides just a breakup, is that this person wreaked havoc in my community.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say that I was the only one that was hurt by my choices, but I wasn't. There were a lot of vulnerable people that were in contact with this person because I brought him into their life, who were hurt by this. So the choice that I made to ignore the voice of the Lord and to affirm my patterns over his cost people significantly. And I'm being vague because I don't need to bring anyone else's life into this story but mine. But I just want to say that the costs of this can be very grievous. I've heard about people who have gone into marriages based on these patterns. Those marriages fail for a number of reasons, and the children of those relationships are left in difficult places because of the patterns that we look at in our humanity that don't align with Scripture.
Yeah.
So the takeaway for you, single person, as you are going into dating, especially if you haven't done much dating before, and you get an opportunity, you're going to be tempted to read into every little coincidence and every nuance, and you're going to be tempted to take everything anyone has ever said to you in an altar about your marriage and apply it to the person that you're talking to right then. And my caution to you is that before you start looking for patterns in yourself, you need to go see how that person aligns with the Word.
Yeah.
And with what you know to be true. So talk to us about the end of your story, because it's different. So you received this prophecy from a respected mentor, and the relationship that you thought it was about dissolves. How did it show up later for you?
Well, what's funny is I remember praying about that prophecy after that relationship. And I kind of forgot about it. Then I met you. We went through a relationship. We went through a breakup. We went through our relationship again. And then we ended up getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about a year or two into our marriage. And I remember in prayer reflecting, looking back and going, oh man, like God brought I'm assuming it's God, maybe it was me, but what came to the forefront of my mind was the prophecy that happened years ago.
Yeah.
And every single one of those details of the prophecy applied to you. Perfectly.
But it hadn't been the driving force of our relationship.
No, I didn't go around looking for someone based on that prophecy.
Yeah.
And it ended up working out the way that I believe God intended it.
Yeah. Sure hope so.
Yeah. I'm stuck with you now.
That's true.
Or more like you're stuck with me now.
That's also true. Happy to be.
Yep. And so that being said, I think the moral of the story is, like, I think prophecy is very valuable. And I think you should be prayerful about it.
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't just take it at face value. I think it is never intended to just believe it and move forward. I think that is always should be checked by intercessory and prayer, and backing it up with the word.
Yeah.
And also, if the prophecy you received is contrary to the word of God, then obviously there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, the prophecy was just validating what a lot of what the Proverbs talk about, in a woman. But he was very specific with certain attributes, and it applies perfectly to you.
And there are things that reflect your values. I mean, maybe not in the way that you wouldn't have maybe framed it that way at the time.
Yeah, I don't think I would have recognized those as my values at the time. Not because they weren't important to me, but I hadn't identified them yet.
Yeah, you didn't have the language for it yet.
Yeah, I really didn't. And so I think through our marriage and your ability to communicate really helped us build that out together, and it was beautiful. Yeah. So I mean, there's just be prayerful.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we want to make sure too that the people that come to us and start this brand new shiny service that's provided to apostolics, that when we match you with someone that fits perfect to your dreams, right? Let's just say we hit the nail on the head.
Right. Check all the boxes.
Which Megan does every single time.
Everyone gets exactly who they describe and what they prefer and their physical preferences.
We're joking. We don't hit the mark every time.
No.
But it's okay. And so
we want them to exercise caution.
Exercise caution. Be prayerful about it. Like at the end of the day, we don't like these people are coming to us and saying, "Hey, we want serious relationships and we believe the same faith and the same doctrine." But at the end of the day, they're people, and so are you. And so we're not expecting you to trust us blindly.
Please don't. I mean, I spend, or when we do consultations, we spend an hour with that person. Yeah. And I try to bring all of my tools and sensibilities and sensitivities into that experience, but it's only an hour.
Yeah.
I cannot know the depth of that person's character in an hour. Right?
Yeah.
And my prayer all the time as I'm going into these is like, Lord, bring the hidden thing to light. If there's something in this person's life that is going to be harmful or hurtful to someone, expose that so I can protect people. And I believe that he does that sometimes. I mean, we've had examples of times when it's like, well, that's not going to be something that we can work with. And he's done that. He's put up barriers, and I'm so thankful to him for that. But if you are going to meet someone through a matchmaker, matching you based on your values is not a guarantee that that person is your person.
Yeah.
It is not meant to be confirmation of some kind of cosmic plan. I'm introducing you, or we're introducing you to someone new that you might not have had a chance to meet otherwise. And now after that, you got to do the legwork to make sure that they fit with your understanding of what you need in a scriptural spouse, your values, and that they're going to be the type of person that can give you the relationship that you need.
Yeah. I want to make sure that we reemphasize that we are not knocking prophecy.
Not in any way.
We are not knocking discernment. We're not knocking people giving words of encouragement or like...
or the ability for God to show you signs, right?
Yeah, we're not... I want to make sure you guys understand that is not what we're trying to say. Mm-hmm. What we are saying is on the human side, how we can misapply the things that God is intending for good because of our impatience at the end of the day.
Right.
And saying, hey, this is how, like you're taking the jigsaw puzzle piece and like cutting the corners off of it for it to fit in your situation.
Right.
And maybe not intentionally, but just be prayerful about it.
And loneliness makes this harder because if you haven't had many opportunities to meet people and an opportunity presents itself, your heart will do whatever it can to make that work.
Yeah.
Right. So I want this to be cautionary so that people know that they need to keep their eyes open when they go into these relationships. I also want to encourage you, if you've done what I've done, which is you've gotten into a relationship that was not godly because you thought the hand of God was in it and it was terrible and you made a bunch of mistakes, you're not stuck with that, right?
Yeah.
Like the Lord, I believe brought us together in the way that he does. And it was a beautiful healing experience to be with someone who looked at the insecurities that I developed in that relationship and dismantled them. You found out about this history on our basically on our first date.
Our first really long date. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was just, I was like, blah, 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 you know, just kind of
Yeah, but
spilled it
the
all.
thing is that was a part of that part of you, and you weren't doing it to gossip.
Right.
I could tell from the very beginning it was about transparency and communication. And that's honestly, you're like literally telling me your baggage from your past. And I'm like, I'm in love with this girl.
Right. I'm like, by the way, I'm not a virgin. And you're like, okay. And the thing that I don't know what possessed me in that moment to divulge that, you know, it was a little awkward, but what I saw in your face when I did that was compassion.
Yeah.
And I have a crystal clear picture of what you looked like when I said that to you. And I felt so safe and so accepted because you didn't press me for details. You weren't, you know, you didn't make me feel like you needed to bring that under a microscope and figure out, you know, like, you know, you didn't try to pick that apart. You just heard me and you acknowledged the pain of that for me, and you were compassionate about it, and then you moved on. And so I also want this to be an encouragement to people that if you've fallen down that rabbit hole in the past and you've made some mistakes, you know, maybe not to the degree that I did, but where you just are coming away feeling like you don't know how to read the signs and you don't know how to be sensitive and you don't know how to pick the right kind of person, you can still get into a really great, healthy relationship, and you can make good choices.
Yeah.
I got very angry with the Lord after that experience, as one does when you've made stupid choices, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
why didn't you tell me, God? And God's like, literally a list of signs.
Yeah, I literally sent you a prophet.
Yeah.
But I got angry at God because it was like
like, all right, Jonah.
Yeah. I felt like he should have stopped it. Like in my head I was like, why didn't you stop this? And he spoke to me about this one day, and he brought up a memory of me when I was a kid where my grandmother had taken a coffee pot out of the coffee maker, and I saw the burner, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, and she said, don't touch that, it's hot. And like a little idiot, I reached out and put my hand on it, right? Yeah. And I got blistered and I cried. And she was like, well, I told you not to touch it. And the Lord brought that to my remembrance. And I felt like he told me, you know, I allow you to go through things that I know won't kill you so that you have the scars to show other people.
Yeah.
And so this is me exposing some scars, but I'm hoping what it's telling people is that, like, one, you can survive those things and still cultivate a really healthy marriage. But two, like, don't do the dumb thing that you know you should, you know, like when someone says don't touch that, when it says in scripture, don't go there. Look at what the Bible says. He's literally written an entire book about how not to mess your life up.
Yeah.
Like, prioritize that over the coincidental meeting that you put together in your mind that fits your fairy tale narrative.
I'm smiling so big because that is 100% how I parent our kids.
Yeah, I know.
And I know it drives you nuts.
It does. You're like, they'll learn.
Yeah, like literally our kids about like the jump off the second step of their bunk bed. And the second step doesn't sound very high, but when they're as short as they are, it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And Megan's like freaking out, like worried they're going to like die. And I'm like, they'll learn. After the first time they hit their head on the side of the desk, they're not going to want to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's just how I am as a kid, you know, like I had to learn the hard way. I warn them, I tell them, and then they make a choice. And that choice is up to them.
Yeah.
But I know they're not going to hurt themselves really bad.
Yeah. I'm the more pessimistic one of the two of us, but God, the takeaway from this is, like, God had his hand in those situations, even though we were misinterpreting the hand of God in both of our stories there. Like, we were putting words in God's mouth in a few different ways.
Oh yeah, very much so. He
still brought his word to fruition, right? He still brought the things that he promised us to be. The prophet that sat with me that day and was coaching me about making good choices was telling me about the type of person that I needed to marry. You know, he needs to be like this, he needs to be like this. And obviously the humility side we're still working on, but no. But again, like when I went back and sat down while I was deciding whether or not I wanted to get back together with you, right? I I had that list of like, how closely do you match what scripture tells me about who I need to be with, right? And you checked boxes, babe. Like, I
checked boxes. I didn't check all the boxes.
Well, you had potential. No, just kidding.
Yeah. You had enough potential. You hit the 70% mark.
Yes, these get degrees.
I believe in that.
No. But like the Lord still, in retrospect, we can look back and see how our relationship was in line with what he was calling us to do and be.
Yeah.
Right. So God is working in behind the scenes, even when we mess this up and when we ascribe meaning to things that aren't actually of him. And his mercy endureth forever. He can take a very broken relationship history and bring something good and healthy out of it. But yeah, I hope that what people are hearing is that, lean not into your own understanding, right? Like, our human understanding can draw us astray. Even, expertise from a matchmaker or a word from something that doesn't quite sit right with you. Our understanding can mislead us in these areas, but
yeah,
the word won't. So come back to that when you're looking to decide whether or not somebody is in line with the person that you want to be with.
That's right.
I'm glad we ended up where we did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Anything else that we should tell people, remind people about?
Register for your pins.
Yeah, go register for your Synchpin.
Community. Go to the form in the community and register for your free pin.
No shipping.
No shipping. And the people who are not a part of the community, you can register for it and you're not paying for the pin, you're just paying for the shipping. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Or you can, if you're going to be at UPCI General Conference, you can grab one for free and you can hang out with our
friends.
From where? At the Cafe 117 booth.
Cafe with a K.
117. Yeah, go see our friends and buy some amazing coffee and support a great cause and pick up your pin there. And they would love to say hi to you. And then you can wear your pin for the rest of the conference.
Get your free pin and buy some coffee from them.
Yeah. Hey, babe. I love you.
I love you.
I'm very grateful that you ended up being the person that you were. I don't know that I could do this with somebody else.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. It's hard to not be a part of this episode and you talk about like your husband, your future husband and all these other things and what you needed and not get a big head.
Okay. Well, God's still working on you. So just allow him to transform your humility over time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love you.
Love you too. Have a great week, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
But they also use 20% of their proteins.
We just leave that in there.
Anyway, they use 20. I can't.